Hello, besties. Welcome back to our dark little corner of the internet. This is where we take stories that look innocent at first and show you why they stay in your head long after the screen goes dark. Tonight, we're talking about dolls. Toys meant to comfort, to decorate, to bring smiles. But behind their stitched grins and glassy eyes, some carry stories that people regret ever discovering. Let's make a deal right now. If you love your mom, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to sleep peacefully tonight, smash like before we begin. Because after these 3 tales, you'll never look at a doll the same way again.
She looked harmless, just a floppy Raggedy Ann doll, with red yarn hair, a stitched smile, and button eyes that were supposed to be friendly. But in the 1970s, 2 young nursing students discovered she was anything but ordinary. At first, it was subtle. They would leave Annabelle sitting on the couch and return home to find her kneeling in the hallway. Sometimes she appeared in a bedroom they hadn't entered all day. They thought it was a joke until the notes appeared, scraps of parchment-like paper they had never owned, marked with a shaky, childlike hand that begged with 2 words, "Help me." The tension grew darker when a guest spent the night. He woke to the sensation of being crushed, unable to move, his lungs struggling for air. Opening his eyes, he found the doll perched on his chest, staring directly at him. When morning came, his torso was covered in long, bloody scratches. Terrified, the women turned to the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. They concluded Annabelle was not possessed by a child at all, but manipulated by a demonic presence. To contain her, they sealed the doll inside a heavy glass case in their occult museum. Across the front, in bold letters, they placed a warning: "Positively do not open." But even behind glass, the legend continued. Visitors claim Annabelle's curse reaches beyond her prison. One young biker mocked the doll, banging on the glass and laughing. Hours later, he lost control of his motorcycle and never made it home. Others who ridiculed her reported sudden accidents, streaks of bad luck, or overwhelming dread. Now she sits silently in her case, a stitched smile fixed in place. But those who have stood before her insist it feels less like a relic and more like a predator, waiting for someone careless enough to set it free.
Annabelle frightens not through appearance, but through contradiction. She is ordinary, even childish, yet she inspires dread. Psychologists call this the uncanny. When something safe suddenly feels unsafe, the brain locks onto it and refuses to let go. A doll is supposed to comfort, but Annabelle subverts that role. She creates a mental trap. The mind says harmless, the emotions say danger. That paradox explains why she has become one of the most notorious cursed objects in the world. What makes her legend stronger is the setting. Annabelle isn't hidden in a ruin or a graveyard. She sits in a brightly lit museum case. The contrast between her innocent design and the warnings surrounding her amplifies the unease. Visitors don't fear what they see, they fear what they can't see. The possibility that something invisible lingers inside the stitched smile. She's not just a relic, she is a reminder that innocence can be the perfect mask for danger. And that's why the story of Annabelle continues to live long after most ghost tales are forgotten.
In 1918, Japan, a little girl named Okiku died suddenly, taken by illness before her time. Among the few possessions she left behind was her beloved doll, a traditional figure dressed in a kimono with straight black hair and glassy eyes. Her family, heartbroken, placed the doll on a household altar in her memory. It was meant to be a symbol of love, a way to keep their daughter close. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The doll stood silently, as dolls do, reminding the family of the child they had lost. But within months, they noticed something impossible. The doll's black hair, once cut neatly in a short style, was growing. First to her shoulders, then brushing her back. Strand by strand, dark and human-like. The family was convinced their daughter's spirit had taken residence within it. They cared for the doll, speaking to it as though Okiku herself were present. Eventually, believing the object was too sacred to remain in their small home, they entrusted it to Manenji Temple in Hokkaido. Even today, priests at the temple claim the hair must be trimmed regularly. They describe it as a solemn duty, not a spectacle. According to them, the hair grows as naturally as any child's, a phenomenon that defies scientific explanation. Researchers who examined the doll confirmed the strands were genuine human hair. yet none could explain how an inanimate object could produce it. Was it a prank, an illusion, or something far stranger? Visitors tell stories that add another layer of unease. When kneeling before the display, some swear they've seen the doll's lips part slightly, millimeter by millimeter, as if preparing to whisper. A few claim they actually heard the faintest sound, a child's voice calling softly, "Okasan." The word means mother. Okiku's face remains serene, her eyes calm yet oddly watchful. For believers, she is undeniable proof that a soul can cling to a vessel. For skeptics, she's a puzzle that science hasn't solved. And for everyone who sees her, she is unforgettable. Not because she leaps or screams, but because she simply waits, quietly challenging you to decide what you believe.
Okiku's legend shows how grief transforms into myth. The doll gave a grieving family comfort, but the story spread until it became folklore, retold far beyond the walls of their home. Folklore thrives on the uncanny, lifeless objects showing signs of life. A doll is meant to be fixed, unchanging. Hair that grows breaks that rule, creating a memory the brain refuses to erase. The more ordinary the object, the more disturbing the transformation. Okiku endures because she sits at the intersection of science, faith, and imagination. Scientists confirmed the hair is real, yet offered no explanation. Believers see proof of a spirit, while skeptics wrestle with doubt. That tension keeps the story alive. She is not terrifying because she leaps or attacks. She is terrifying because she waits, changing slowly, daring you to watch. And that kind of quiet horror is the hardest to forget.
You don't need a museum or temple to find cursed dolls today. You only need Wi-Fi. Search haunted doll on eBay and you'll see cracked porcelain faces and eerie glass eyes for sale. Descriptions warn, not safe for children, causes nightmares, don't keep in your bedroom. It sounds like marketing, but then come the reviews. One buyer said their smoke alarm went off at 3 a.m. the night the doll arrived. Another swore they felt weight on the bed, as if someone invisible sat beside them. The most chilling account described a doll that vanished from a shelf and reappeared days later inside a locked car. Others claim the eyes shift in photos, or whispers echo in quiet rooms. Skeptics call it suggestion. But real money changes hands, and every purchase adds fuel to the legend. Haunted or not, these dolls terrify because people believe in them. And belief spreads faster than any curse.
The haunted dolls of eBay prove how folklore evolves in the digital age. Stories that once spread by whispers around a fire now travel instantly through listings, comment sections, and late-night unboxings on YouTube. Technology doesn't kill superstition. It multiplies it. The dolls themselves may be ordinary, cracked porcelain, faded fabric, cheap plastic. But once a seller claims not safe for children or causes nightmares, the imagination of the buyer does the rest. Reviews act like modern-day folklore. Repeated enough times, they transform coincidence into evidence. When multiple strangers describe the same cold spots, the same alarms at 3 a.m., the story gains weight whether it is true or not. Psychologists call this suggestibility. The human brain is wired to find patterns and confirm what it expects. But suggestion alone doesn't make these stories harmless. Fear doesn't need proof to thrive, it only needs repetition. And repetition is what the internet does best. That is why these dolls endure. They are not just porcelain and paint, they are symbols of how belief itself can haunt. Once a story spreads online, it can never be fully buried. The doll becomes a vessel not only for superstition, but for an entire network of collective imagination. Besties, those were the dolls people regret owning. Annabelle, locked forever behind glass. Okiku, displayed in a temple, her hair refusing to stop. And the haunted dolls of eBay, shipped in ordinary boxes yet carrying extraordinary fear. Maybe they're only stories, maybe they're marketing. But legends survive because they twist the familiar into something horrifying. Now it's your turn. Which of these 3 stories was the scariest for you? Rank them in the comments from most terrifying to least. And if you want more dark lore every week, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because besties, this is just the beginning. The next stories are even darker.